Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint Consulting, Darian the Family Guy, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best-kept secret in teaching. You got it, international education. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the International Teacher Podcast. This is Greg the Single Guy, and as always, on my side here is Kent the Cat Guy. How you doing, Kent?
Hey, yeah, major announcement for the ITP crowd. Greg is now the single bot, and I'm now the cat bot. We've replaced us with AI, not only because it's cheaper, but also it's funnier. So the fandom has a lot to look forward to.
That was a real
Single
low
bot.
bar we set, but AI, even 10 years ago could have accomplished that. All right. Enough with all the jokes, Kent. This is a serious show. We have with us two guests. This is Jacob and Aimée, and they are here with us. They are the guests, they are our guests, but they have their own podcast, Kent. It's called the International Teacher Staff Room. And I love it. It's a younger show than ours, but they have an excellent audience, I'm sure, ready. And I want to say hello to Aimée. How are you? Aimée, I'm sorry.
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
And Jacob, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
And I was hoping, you're both welcome from Switzerland and France. I would like to open this up and have maybe, Aimée, you could start with an elevator pitch of how you got into education, how you got where you are now.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a teacher of 29 years now. I have to keep counting that up. And yes, classroom teacher. I teach Lang and Lit, media and communications. And I'm also a teaching and learning coach. I dabble in a lot of different things. Currently, I am coaching at my school and teaching at an international school here in Switzerland. And I also run TeachSpark, which is my heart and soul, my business where I help teachers to increase student engagement and really build that student ownership in their classrooms in a very practical way. So I help secondary teachers to do that. And I don't know, how did I get here? It was very higgledy-piggledy, if I'm truthful. But yeah, I started in public school in D.C., Maryland, and then moved to Switzerland. And I've been in international environment ever since. And I've done leadership roles, department head, classroom teaching, support, professional development. I've done it all, and I'm very happy where I'm sitting now, which is a little bit of everything. As long as I'm making a difference in the lives of young people, I am very happy. So here I am.
Thank you very much. And being in Switzerland, it's tough to really leave that country because it is so beautiful. I feel everything, at least you're teaching there in Switzerland. You live in France and you're in your chateau, but I think Switzerland to me is one of those places where everything is like the details. Even the blades of grass are taken care of in many places. I love it. So thank you for joining us. That's 29 years. I mean, I know we're in the presence of greatness, Kent. All right. I know, Jacob, you're too young. You haven't been teaching 29 years. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, I listened to your podcast, and I hear you ask people this question. I'm like, oh no, like an elevator pitch about how I got in. It's so hard. But I'm gonna try. To do it. So, I won a sweepstakes in the early 2000s and got a free plane ticket to Hong Kong. And so I went to Hong Kong. I'm from Minnesota, and nobody really goes to China. But there I was. So I win the sweepstakes. I go to China, and I just, you get the bug, and I'm like, it felt like I was on a different planet. And so when I came back, I was like, I definitely want more of this. So after I graduated from university with my teaching degree, I didn't have a job, and my parents were probably worried about me because I was spending a lot of time in my room in the middle of the night. And then all of a sudden, one day I come downstairs and say, I have a job in China, and I leave in like a month. And I signed a 6-month contract. It wasn't an international school. They paid for the flight. They paid you kind of a living wage. And so I did that. There I met my wife. She's British. She was probably doing something very similar. We moved back to Minnesota, and I worked in the public schools like Aimée for a while, 5 years, I think. And then we went to the UK, where she's from, got a job at an international school in the UK, which I was very lucky to do because none of my qualifications transferred. And then became British. This is pre-Brexit, so I could travel freely throughout Europe. It was amazing, and live freely in Europe. And so then I got a job in Switzerland. We moved to France, and I started cycling across the border every day, and that's how I ended up here. Now I'm the head of educational technology at a large international school in the Geneva area, and yeah, so that's me.
You said cycle across the
Sweepstakes.
borders. They do allow cars across that border. Is that correct? Or cycles only?
Yeah, but if you cycle, there are no questions asked. No, you just go right through. Nobody's asking for your passport.
I'm still
one's
trying to get
asking-
over the idea that you won a sweepstakes. It's like, hey, you're going to China. Welcome.
Yeah.
You thought you were magazines or something. He's going to show up at the door, but they're like, you won a trip to China.
Yeah, shout out
amazing.
to not to Lonely Planet, to Let's Go. I don't know if you guys ever bought the
Yeah.
Let's Go travel books. Just the back page. It was one of those, like rip off the back page. There was like 5
No way.
destinations that you could tick. I ticked Hong Kong and then got a ticket there and then was traveling around China.
It was really Hong Kong's way of targeting an underrepresented demographic there, Minnesotans. So it worked. Good job.
I
Very
learned
more
stuff
exactly.
about Jacob. I've known Jacob for years, and there are things I didn't know. There you go.
Well,
That's what the show is all
let's-
about. We bring out
Let's-
the
we
really
bring
good
people
stories.
together. Now, here's the thing. The reason I teamed up with Greg is because at our school, nobody can tell us apart. I mean, they don't even know we're two different people. So that's how we got teamed up. How did the two of you, what's the story of your partnership? And tell us a little bit about, how your podcast got started. Just give us that story.
I'm waiting for Jacob to jump in there.
Was it a sweepstakes again?
We are.
Cereal box. Cereal box.
You
Yeah.
want a podcast?
I want another sweepstakes.
We kind of came together because I think in schools you find the people who are the good eggs, the ones that kind of hang around and looking and talking about the same thing, looking at and talking about the same things. And so we kind of found each other quite early. I don't quite even remember when, but we were like, this is somebody I want to work with. So we started doing a lot of collaborative projects, trying to lift teachers' voices to make things better in the classroom for students. And a lot of that centered around tech. How do we bring tech in? I think we had worked on integrating iPads one-to-one into our school. So I was on Jacob's tech committee. And then, I don't know, now I'm looking back, Jacob roped me into a lot of initiatives and collaborative projects and professional development.
She never says no, guys. She never says no. That's part of the secret.
That's why he keeps coming back. He keeps coming back. But we did a lot of work in that, bringing one of my favorite projects was bringing students into the professional development and having them teaching teachers about how they want how to use iPads and stuff. So we've done a lot of fun projects together, and we're kind of each other's thought partner when it comes to anything having to do with presenting, giving a session. We kind of run things by each other, and that's been a wonderful partner to have in our school setting. And we both have a love of cycling and food and Midwest and things like this. We speak a language no one else speaks, which is Midwest, and so we kind of laugh whenever things come out that sound Midwest. And then we kept going in that, and we started a podcast. And I'm gonna let Jacob tell that story.
Oh, the podcast. I was doing another position that got me more out of the classroom than I'd ever been before. And I had an opportunity to further realize like this distance between people that work in schools with students and people that don't do that. And I was meeting all these wonderful people in that space, and they were brilliant. They know so much. And then I was also working with teachers in that space and realized like they know so much, but there's this gap in between the two, people who teach and people who don't. And so I wanted to create a podcast that sort of like lived in that space. So maybe some of these brilliant people who aren't in the day-to-day realities of teaching can talk to people who are. And so hence the letter writing, you know, actual teachers writing in, and then these other people that most of them that we get on the podcast are very close to the classroom, but can give advice from maybe a different perspective and be more authentic in their answers. Because, you know, for example, with AI, like, I don't know if you guys have had, I'm sure you guys have had loads of conversations about AI. They just get very theoretical very quickly. And what I wanted to do is make sure like the letters are grounded. I mean, the conversation is grounded in the realities of teaching. And so that's why we kind of came up with this letter idea.
And for the listeners, I just want to explain, from what I understand and from listening, I think you have 8 episodes now. Each episode starts out right away with a little bit of banter, but then you, after you introduce yourselves and your other guest co-hosts for the show, that you have letters written into you from different teachers around the world at international schools, and then you address the answers. And it's completely anonymous. You guys have done a great job with that. And it's not like anything else out there. We have a very small niche of, did I say that word right? Niche. It's a very small niche of podcasts out there for international. When I came across it, I was like, what a brilliant idea. Your content is really about the letters of your audience. It's much different than ours.
If I can ask, we occasionally get letters on the ITP, but they're usually letters for us to get, quit and just get off the air, and then that's from our parents. That's the weird part of it. So how in the world do you guys reach out and get letters? We would love to have the ITP crowd send us letters. How do you reach out to your audience?
So we posted on LinkedIn, and the letters just started flowing. No, that's not true. No, nobody, like, you have to...
You lied.
You have to beg people you have to post multiple times. You have to reach out to people you know, or you sort of know. The guest that's coming on, you have to ask them to bring letters. And I think that's because teachers are busy, and some of the stuff we want people to write in about, people don't really want to admit, you know. So for example, on our last episode, Classroom Management Nightmares, like, you know, like, you're asking people to, what are you struggling with in the classroom? Like, tell us a specific that you really, you know, that isn't going well, and sit down and write about it. It is difficult to get people to write in. And so if you're listening and you have something that you want to write in about, we will do season 2. So please write a letter. After that, sometimes when we get the letters, because the person is writing about it, they just sort of pour everything into it. And so then if they leave their email address, sometimes I write them back and say like, oh, can we make this a little bit shorter? And, you know, so it's like a whole process in turning, you know, their situation into a letter that can be read on the show.
Have you ever got a letter that was seriously a cry for help from someone seeking serious advice that maybe wasn't even something you could do on the air?
No, everything has been able to go onto the air. Aimée, what would you say the toughest episode? Should I stay or should I go? That was probably maybe the toughest one?
Yeah, I guess that was hard because you don't want to give people advice that could be career changing, and you know, you might say something and they leave, or you might say something and they stay, and that's not really what they want. So that was a bit of a tough one because we also don't have the answers. You know, there's hope that there's the win-win. If you leave, you're winning something. Rather than losing something. But that was a nervous one for me because I wanted that person to feel supported, but they really need to make their own decision on that.
Yeah, and the one specifically was this person was sort of, they felt like, I call it the tide had turned against them in their school.
Yeah.
You know, when all of a sudden you can't do anything right, and leadership's like pointing out mistakes and errors, and they're like, should I just leave? And it's like, well, you don't know. Like, and so we always have this disclaimer that we read, like, we're just giving advice. We don't know. And we try to give lots of different perspectives, and then hopefully they can just sort of pick one of those lanes and commit to it.
I was going to say the disclaimer that you have in the very beginning of your show, which you have rightfully done every episode. I love it, Amy. I'm sorry, M.A. M.A., it's very from the heart, and I think when you guys preface that and you remind it about a little bit way in, and you say, this is just advice from people that have been overseas for a long time, and as a listener, I felt very comfortable hearing the advice. I've been to 7 different schools. I've seen people come and go. And now I've stayed at the same school for almost 10 years, and I've seen lots come and go. But as one of the ones that was transitional a lot, and a couple of those were really bad scenarios. I don't think I wrote in one letter to you guys. It was long and drawn out, and it didn't have a simple question. Just like Jacob was saying.
How do I get rid of my co-host on a podcast?
Well, I was like, oh, guys,
Please help us.
Kick him out of home. But, just so you both know, as a listener point of view, I loved it. I love your show because you state right up from the beginning, we are not here to give you all the answers. We're here to give you alternative and a couple lanes that you can choose, as Jacob said. So from a viewpoint, I wanted to comfort you a little bit and let you know that as a listener, that works for me. And that's one listener for you. Okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks.
That's really good to hear because we take that part quite seriously, and we're here to talk about things, bring issues that teachers are facing in their classrooms, in their schools, up to the surface, talk about those openly, and give voice to that which we don't usually have the voice of the classroom teacher. They're busy. They don't have platforms. They don't have time to be, thought leading out on LinkedIn and this kind of stuff. So it's nice to be able to bring that. What is it really like in the classroom, and what are the issues that we're facing day to day? So
It's hard because when you're when you want advice from somebody, if it's written down, you can't hear the honesty in their voice, in their reading. So hearing it from you, from my point of view, is much more valuable to make my own decision based on what I've heard from your show rather than what I read on LinkedIn or what I read on everybody has an opinion and nobody has to stand up for it and you can't prove it, right? So someone can listen to your show and get to know you two, but it's easier for me to accept what you're saying and make a decision based on some of your advice that's tried and true. And with that, I'd like to make a disclaimer of our own. For those of you listening out there, don't listen to anything that Kent says because I can't trust him. And totally kidding, Kent. I'm sorry. Don't start
we
crying.
should have been reading that from the very beginning. Quick question for you all. Do you guys get follow-up from some of the letters that you've read from the people who wrote them? Do you ever hear back?
Good question.
I wouldn't know. That's a Jacob question
Hold
because
on,
he
this is a
handles
me
all the
question.
letters.
I usually get personal follow-up. Sometimes I know who they are because of the back and forth, and sometimes I don't. And they're like, "Oh, you did my letter on the show," and I'm like, "Which one?" and then they tell me, and every time it's only happened a couple times, to be honest. And every time I was like, "Oh, well, this is my chance to ask. Like, was the advice, all right?" And most of the time, on these occasions, they've said, "Yeah, it's pretty much what I knew. Like, it's pretty much what I already thought." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And one of the things that Aimée has always said is that it feels like we know every letter. And I hope when people listen to it, they go like, "Oh, did that person I know write that letter? Or did I write that letter?" Because we're hoping some of the themes are very universal to
Empathy.
What the things people are writing into aren't like, "Whoa, that's crazy," and that would never happen to someone I know. We hope it's kind of the opposite. And it's like, "Oh yeah, that's a thing. Oh, that's a thing too," and so yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Well, to follow up, what are some topics that either you don't want to come up that is kind of off limits topics for you? Or what are some topics that you hope to address in future letters? Like, for instance, will you do relationships overseas? Or will you do, that sort of breaking up of couples or getting married as a teacher? What are some of the topics that you hope for, or some topics that you know what, I don't think we want to go there?
I want all the topics. I'm not shying away from
I feel a letter coming
anything.
on.
I'm a very bold, person, even in my school, in every conversation I have. I say, bring it on. I want to hear some hard truths about what it looks like in my classroom, in the school. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes around between classroom and administration, or the way the school works, the culture. Those are the questions that I'd love to see coming up. Because yes, once we're in our classroom, we're in our domain, but it's out of there that sometimes is challenging. So I say, bring all those on. Struggles with, finding your place, finding your voice, being appreciated, all these things. That's really good stuff. However, we have had to cut some things because we don't want to get too personal about our own situations and our own schools. Those are areas that we tend to downplay a little bit or cut out because, we're both working in a school, in a community. We have a reputation there. We have, protection. We protect our community to a certain extent because we love them, and this is the place where we are every day. So those kind of things maybe we hesitate with. So that's an answer to your first question. I'll let Jacob answer and see where we're at with what do we want to hear.
Yeah, no, we'll take letters about anything. We're happy to address any of the issues. I feel like we've both been in international schools for a long time, and then also one of the things, by having the third guest, so far I've been able to kind of generate these themes and then bring someone in that knows about that thing, so they can add a certain amount of credibility to whatever issue that we're discussing. So for example, on Letters About Leadership episode, most of the writers were women, so we brought in Nancy, and Aimée, you're gonna have to help me pronounce Nancy's last name.
Squicciarini. That's going to be terrible. She's going to not like that. But yeah, we just see it
Nancy
written
from
down.
ECIS.
Yes, Nancy from ECIS.
And she's really into women in leadership. So all of a sudden it became very easy. I mean, very few people probably care what I have to say about women in leadership. I'm supportive of women, but I don't know if my voice is the one that needs to be added to the women in leadership conversation. So we brought her on, and she was great. And in that episode, I didn't have, as much you should do this and you should do this advice as maybe I do in other episodes.
Oh, you're downplaying that, Jacob, but your perspective on what it's like to observe how women are treated in leadership, I thought was very poignant, very, very important to hear. And that helped me to understand that although men may be silent in those spaces, you do watch, you hear, you recognize that things are challenging for women in leadership. So I think it was appropriate, but that was one of my favorite episodes. Yeah.
So if I understand this correctly, do you usually have a third host who speaks to the topic? Who are some of the other hosts that you've invited on to join you to?
Well, let's just name drop, huh?
Julia Knight, Christopher Clyde Green.
Yeah,
John
we had
Mickton.
John Mickton, but not talking about technology. We had him talking about, what was John? John was on there talking to us about episode 2. Aimée, what was it?
I thought it was should I stay or should I go? Was that his?
No, John was on talking about teacher recognition.
Yes. Oops.
John Mickton was on about teacher recognition. Nancy, letters about leadership. Shane Leaning was should I stay or should I go, which he's doing great consulting work in Asia about leadership. Julia Knight, who started like many schools, did our Are You a Teacherpreneur episode.
I love that.
And then Emily Murphy, a professional development lead for an international schools organization, did Classroom Management Nightmares. So,
And then our award show, which is coming out soon. That one, oh wait, sorry, that's already out.
It's out already.
Yeah,
Oh.
sorry. I don't know what my brain
And
is
we didn't
telling
win
me.
the award, Kent. They gave it to Cult of Pedagogy for the best podcast, I think. I didn't listen to the whole thing. But you know what? She's been around forever, and I think we should have been number one, Kent.
Well,
Don't
now-
you?
you were
Hold on a
probably
second.
like, you know she's good. She's been so good
Well,
for
now,
so long.
podcasting is kind of a small world. Have you
Small world.
personally reached out and talked to other podcasters in the education field?
Yeah, I mean, well, John Micton has his own podcast, which is highly popular and really useful.
Yep.
So yeah, we welcome
International schools, right?
that. Yes.
Yeah, the
Podcast?
International Schools Podcast, yeah.
And Shane has his own. The thing about bringing people on, that third person, what I love about that is that yes, they may be an expert in something, but we get to push them to talk to the teacher directly. We want to know, yes, you're a thought leader. Yes, you do consultant work, or you're in maybe a different space. You may not be in the classroom. You might be. But some of those people in leadership, it's nice to hear them talk directly to teachers and say, this is how I see this. This is what I think you should do. And it helps them to reconnect with their teacher self, like what was it like to be back in the classroom? How do I hear that, and how do I respond and support teachers who are in it every day? I love that piece. And I think the hosts enjoy that, the guests enjoy that as well, because they get to nerd out on practical, what should I do in my classroom type questions. So
It's also like, who are you going to get next? As a listener, I'm just waiting for the next episode to see who you're going to get on there. It sounds like you have very, very broad connections. I think that you guys have both made a lot of great friends overseas in different countries, and having them on, like I said, I can't wait to hear the next person that I know that might have their own podcast. Maybe they don't have a podcast, and hearing them speak, like you said, it's refreshing to hear somebody that's out in the field, that's had experiences, and have them come on to a show. And it feels very connected. All of your show episodes, they follow a theme, and I think it's great to listen to it because it's coming from the listeners to you as the host, and to have that special guest host, it's great. I mean, I wish I could get rid of Kent and just have, some guests on once in a while, but
I think what Greg's trying to tell you guys is that you guys are working your butts off on that podcast, and
We're
Greg
not.
and I,
We don't work at all.
We just have a couple of microphones, and we learned how to use them, and we don't know what we're doing. You guys put a lot of time and effort into your project.
Aimée, maybe this is just going to be for us, and this is not to offend you guys whatsoever. But Aimée, do you remember Car Talk?
yes, I remember.
Boy,
what is it?
I used to listen to Car Talk on my commute to school, when those commutes were like an hour and a half, up from DC into Maryland, and sitting on the Beltway listening to Car Talk.
And these guys, these two, first of all, if you don't know Car Talk, I don't know if you can still find it.
I do.
You've got to listen
don't.
to it. And because you guys sound, your dynamic is very similar to the Car Talk guys. And it's one of the most popular before podcast radio shows
That's
in
right.
the U.S.
That is
You
high
didn't know
praise,
that we
Jacob.
actually are Car Talk.
High
You didn't know
praise.
that. Kent and I we change our accents, and we sound much differently on radio.
You guys are
You didn't know that? Jacob, I
you're
mean,
the
come on.
international Car Talk guys. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Wow, that is
Well,
high praise, Jacob.
No,
that
what-
means, are we in the running for next year's awards?
Oh my goodness! People want these awards.
Starts now.
They don't
If you
take
come to
payment, Kent.
Switzerland, you'll get a cup of coffee and a piece of chocolate. But these awards, we're so thrilled that people are feeling praised and feeling that we see them and their work. So that was a really fun episode to do, and like I said, lifting other people's voices. I've always said that a rising tide lifts all boats, and if we can help
Agreed.
others to bring their message and their ideas to the world, great. This is wonderful. But
Yeah,
you
no,
were
it's really
asking
fun.
about. Sorry, you were asking about the the hosts and the themes and how aligned they are. Well, that's another kind of, I guess, trick we use, which is once we figure out, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And the person agrees. We're like, all right, go get some letters on a topic that you're interested in. So when they go to their network, they ask
Can't
them,
go get some letters.
yeah, I got to go get letters, and I really want to talk about X, so I got to go get letters about X from my network, from people I know, and then the show shapes around that theme. But sometimes we don't have a theme. It just depends on how strong that guest is on putting that word out there that please write in about this theme that we want to.
All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITPXpats. That's with an S. ITPXpats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show. Can I do a challenge now? Since I have you, I'm going to blindside you guys with this, but I should have asked you before. Is there any chance, and I bet Jacob has one on his computer, you have a letter that you might like to share that we could banter about? Can we try that? Would you be willing?
I don't know. I don't
or do
know
you
if I
want
have
to?
it. It takes. I don't have anything because we finished the season, and
Oh.
I noticed all our letters. We got everything we could out of our letters because people write letters in the fall and in the winter, and now I'm not getting very much at the end of the school year. I feel like people have made their.
People are busy. Yeah.
Darn
But
it.
the fun thing-
Well, maybe
what I
we'll
was
have you on
gonna say-
again to do a letter.
Yeah,
Well,
we
here,
could.
I'll
we could
write my own mini letter, and you can address this issue because this is an issue I've seen coming around. And we
Okay.
remember we still have not answered the question about what we want to hear about, so we'll come back to that.
That's
But
true.
I'll give you an issue that I see coming up in schools now, and this is a hard one, especially because Jacob and I are teaching in Switzerland and nearby Geneva. So the global issues surrounding cuts to aid, foreign aid, these are all affecting our communities because we have very many of our people in the UN, and we have spouses, families, and this kind of thing.
Oh, my.
So we're looking at some reductions in hours, which is very difficult for our colleagues. They're hearing around about now that there are not enough hours for them, and I wonder, how do I help them to process that, and how do I help them sit in that space? And maybe that is the time to go. Maybe it's the time to stay and reconsider your relationship with your school. But I would imagine globally you're going to see people having reduction in hours based on, especially an international school scene. So what do we tell these people? How do we help them to handle that news?
Yeah, that's so true. You know, people saying like, well, you're not going to lose your job, but you're going down to 80%. Or you're not going to lose your job, but you only get half time next year. Like, what do you say?
You know, it's tricky, and I'll try not to say too much, but, you know, we have similar issues where our school is highly dependent upon the oil and the gas industry. And, you know, just like anything out there, there's been contractions, and we go through this with our coworkers and our families and our students. And it's tough because on one hand, you have to identify that there's going to be people are going to be upset and angry, and you can't just discount it. You can't just say, oh, well, you know, they've been so good to you, so don't be angry about it. I think acknowledge that we're frustrated, we're angry, And then on the next hand, I think part of it is, I've talked to some families here who have been here. These kids that we teach, this is where they live. This is where they were born. And now they're going back to a home country. That's not a place they've ever lived. And I think it is at some point looking back and trying to find what you've gained over your time, what the positives are, because, I think that's one way that you're going to get past that anger, that frustration. And it's just, I think going into it, we know after a certain number of years, we're all going to be, gone from here. Maybe not you, Aimée, because I think you might live there. But it's interesting. I told Greg that the longer I'm here, the less friends I have, because they leave over the years. And so it does get kind of lonely. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I know acknowledging how people feel and then, again, trying to turn to what we love about what we do.
Yeah, it's a good one. I love that. I mean, I could be transferred out, not because of my school, but my husband works at the UN. And so, we're in a precarious situation. We're very grateful that we are where we are and we've been here this long, but there are people being affected, and that is the time to bring out that empathy, as I heard Greg was saying before about being empathetic. I wonder also how much, if administrators are listening, how do you have that conversation is really important. For teachers, it's so important more about how you have the conversation rather than what you're saying. And are you listening, and are you letting that person process that this is a tough time? I think this is super important.
Greg, what would you say to this person?
Yes,
Greg's ready to go.
Long-time listener. I don't have any advice for what to say. My advice to any teacher that's dealing with other people that are sharing about this, that are trying to find the answers, my advice for that teacher is to be a sounding board and to keep it confidential instead of just going to the cooler and saying, hey, I heard so-and-so is getting cut or their hours are getting cut. I don't have answers for that. I've seen it time and time again. At our school, I was told when I arrived, I was like, they never fire anybody as far as the teaching staff, right? And I'm not speaking out of class by saying we had 5 people let go a couple years into my stay here. And I was like, what? I heard no one ever gets fired. And I was like, it's just tried and true that things happen. And where it seems like wherever I go, things happen no matter if you say it's never happened. Well, it might happen when I'm there. Back to my advice is just to be a good listener and be a good sounding board, because what I've learned as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm only 25 now, but I've learned that, yeah, I know I'm not 25, I'm 55. I've learned that listening and not giving advice is sometimes and many times more powerful than trying to solve someone else's problem. They just need to listen. They need you to listen. So, yeah, like Kent has said, we have a lot of changes going on over the years as we stay here and become dinosaurs and our friends leave, and we don't always need to pass that information on to somebody else, so keep it confidential and listen.
Yeah, I agree. I never tell anybody anything. And it's true. Like, people will come to me and they'll say, I want to tell you this thing. And I say, I never tell anybody anything. And I think the reason for that is I say it's comforting for you, because sometimes people ask me about something, because in my position, I get to kind of know a lot, I feel, and I feel very privileged. But sometimes people ask me stuff and I'll say, I can't tell you that. Like, even if I'm not going to. And that should make them feel better, that if they tell me something, I'm not going to go tell someone that. And I think sometimes the rumor machine can make things actually a little bit worse. Like, oh, did you hear that person's going down this many periods? And, oh, man, what does that mean for me? And then, like, it just kind of snowballs. I would say for school leaders, what you shouldn't do is waffle on the whole thing and not tell people the real reasons, because I think that's what drives teachers crazy the most, is when they don't know the real reason for a decision, and then they start making up what they think the reason is, and oftentimes it's not as cynical or what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, help me out.
Nefarious or
Like nefarious
Shady.
reason. Yeah, that a teacher thinks conspiratorial as a teacher might invent in their mind. And the only reason I say this is because that's what I do. So you better tell me the real reason why you're making that decision, right? So
Me too. But clear is kind, right?
yeah,
Clear is kind. Stop waffling. And also, please don't do that as a by the way. By the way, you're not having any hours next year. Like, come on, have a proper conversation. But
Yeah.
I have also been guilty of that, Jacob. And when we talk about staff rooms and what should a staff room feel like, this is a place to protect right now and not whip people up into a frenzy, into fear around hours. And, so.
who gets what? And did you hear this person is...
I like
gonna
your
be
off-the-cuff letter. I know it's been brewing a long time, but that was a great example of your show, to tell you the truth. We've never talked about this much important stuff on our show, have we, Kent?
No,
That's not true.
we usually talk about your hat. No, by the way, I'd like to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, Maple's Meats. This episode brought to you by, again, Maplewood Meats, www.maplewoodmeats. Go to them whenever you need your finer meats. Thank you. Back to the show.
We don't mean to make light of anything that we just talked about, because we are very serious. We do like to talk about serious things on the show, but we do have to keep it lighthearted. And when you look at Kent and you look at me, how can you not laugh a little bit? So we do waffle back and forth between serious and comedy, right, Kent?
No, because
But,
I listen to your guys' podcast.
We have
too.
comedy?
Yeah.
Sorry,
and
Jacob, go on. Sorry, buddy.
One of the things that I love about podcasting, and I think you guys probably have the same experience. Like, if you ask someone to come on your podcast, they usually say yes. Like, and that's so fun. Like, people, it's not hard to get people to come on. Like, people want to do it, and so that's it's like a great community builder, like these international school podcasts, because you get to connect with people that you wouldn't normally get to connect with. It's almost like a conference, but you don't have to travel anywhere.
Or
I tell you what, though,
presenter
the cult of pedagogy, she does not want me on her show. I have been emailing her for years, like 4 or 5 years, saying, can we talk to each other? I love your show. I want to
Greg,
be on it.
I'm
She
trying
won't
to
let
tell
me.
you, the restraining order is good for online too, buddy.
Are we gonna have to write an apology letter to the cult of
Look.
pedagogy now? I think we need to. We're trying to get in the #1 spot, but I don't know if we have enough of a niche. It's too small for international teaching, right? She's got the whole idea of education, and we have to embed that into our show and make it meaningful for the international educators.
Well, she's been around for such a long time. I was in
know.
conversations with her very earlier on in her work, but she's got a very specific thing she wants. She wants
Yes.
tried and true. She wants to know, how does it making an impact? What are you bringing on that's going to add to teacher practice? That these are particular for her. So, and now she's big. She's got a big team, and
I think she gets paid, I told Kent we're going to give him a 30% raise, out of the coffers. And 30% of zero is zero. So I
This
think
is
he's very happy with his raise.
A good time to remind the ITP crowd that the ITP podcast will always be free. And if you want to keep it that way, send a check to Greg and Kent. Do it now to keep this show going, always free.
And we accept all forms of currency, don't we, Kent?
I think now we got a PayPal thing going on.
Hey, how are your listeners, you guys? How's your MA? How's your listenership? Because ours ebbs and flows once in a while. We've been around a long time, and we aren't monetized, and we don't really care. I mean, I think my mom was the only listener for years, right?
like and follow. Well, Jacob and I said
what's our
from the beginning,
listenership like?
if it's not fun, we're not doing it. So that's our first motivation. It's gotta be fun. It's gotta fit into our regular work, and it's low prep, which we're super thrilled about. So there you go. And then the listenership, it's millions, like millions. I'm surprised we've hit 1 million. I don't know.
You guys hit
Jacob
1 million?
won't tell me. Jacob won't tell me because
won't tell
I'm
her.
highly anxious about it.
And that's because, like, the whole point of it is it's supposed to be fun. And if we create certain episodes that get more listeners than other episodes, we might start to go in that direction. And I don't want it to become like that. I'd rather just pick the people I want to have on and create the sort of episodes we want to create without thinking like, oh, if we talk about AI, we're going to get more episodes, or if we talk about I don't know, getting jobs, we'll get more episodes, versus like the issues that we actually feel like teachers need to hear about. And we have enough of a listenership base that always listen, that I'd rather sort of cater to those people than try to like go out and grab more people by having, you know, episodes that will bring in more people for just that episode. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm curious as a podcaster. We've been doing this for 4 years. We're at like 130 or 125 episodes now. And we put it out every 2 weeks, and our listeners are amazing. We have some of them come onto our show after listening to us for a couple of years. And we just had a teaching couple that's going out, and they're going for their first overseas positions, right, with their family. And we just interviewed them, and it means a lot because we know that we've reached at least one or two listeners. And as a teacher, I don't know about you guys, but for me, if I change one life, you know, in one lesson, if I reach one student, I feel like I've hit the lottery. And this podcast is the same way. We meet so many neat people on our show that come on. We get to reach out, and people will just reach out to us and say, hey, we don't want to do anything but just say, hey, you've made a difference. And that's all the payment we need. That's why we keep doing it. And we will continue doing it I as long as I can, as long as Kent can. But Kent, right? It's our listeners base is very small, but it's broad enough that we're making a difference at one at a time.
And this is a good chance. That teaching couple did buy a copy of Greg's book.
They did.
International Teaching, the Best Kept Secret in Education. www.amazon.com or wherever
copies.
you buy your finer books. Let me say the name of your podcast again, because I would love for the ITP crowd. I think it's International Teaching, the Staff Room. Is
Staff
that
Room.
what the International Teaching Staff Room?
International
correct?
Teacher Staff Room.
Staff
Yeah.
room.
Yeah. We would love for the ITP crowd to jump over and catch your back catalog. When will new episodes? When will season 2?
Yeah, we're not
start up
hardcore
again?
like you guys. I mean, we've shut it down. Like, we did 8 episodes, and we'll probably do 8 next season too. And over the summer, we do not record. We're on. The staff room is only open during the academic year, and so.
Kent, did you catch that? He called us hardcore.
I love that. I love that. Well, we do. You know what, Greg? You put the time in. I'll tell you that, buddy. You've been on just about every single one of these episodes, except for the week you had to go.
Unfortunately for the listening audience, right? Are you going to ask the 2 questions, Kent?
Well, hold on a second. No, hold on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead.
No, I just want to know, so when you guys return to school in September, will we be able to keep our eyes open for some new episodes?
Yeah, and the episodes, the 8 that we have up, we're hoping they're kind of, they're evergreen. You can listen to, an episode about classroom management. You can listen to Should I Stay or Should I Go? Letters about leadership. Like, all these episodes, you can listen to them now. It's not
They're
like
timeless.
they were. Yeah. I didn't want to use the word timeless.
No, they are. I think they're very helpful. I've listened to them twice now, the episodes.
So,
it's great.
You'll be
not
getting your
blowing
check in the
smoke
mail,
here.
Greg. That's for sure. But
Some things we want to hear about, things we want people to write in about, everything. I'm interested in hearing about student ownership, engagement. Like, how's that going for people? What do you want to know? That's the place I'm living right now, and I'm very interested in that topic. I always want to hear more about AI, and I don't know.
And
what else.
listen, Aimée, how can they reach out to you and write these letters? You want to hear from our audience, and we're going to spread it out there too with our podcast. So how can our listeners reach out with a letter for you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so they can find me there. And if you go into my posts, you'll see links to write the letters. It's just a form. And
it's
then
Google form.
I don't know where else it's published. I think in the show notes. Is that right, Jacob?
Yep. in the show notes. Maybe not the latest episode. But yeah, we always post the price here, and it's an anonymous Google form, and you can either put your email address if you want, or you don't have to.
Yeah,
So our
into the
listeners
show.
can actually Google you, which I've done. We can easily Google International Teacher Staff Room, and you'll find links to the show. You're on Spotify and Apple and a lot of the podcasting host platforms, and they can find the link there very easily. I've done it already. Make sure, and if I'm not mistaken, you guys would like to have some very succinct questions that are meaningful that can be used, and they can also, do a little bit more dialogue with you, but we don't want to cause too much pain for Jacob to go through and rewrite the questions.
Well, it's not a
Fine.
rewrite. It's shaping. It's like, let's make sure your story, follows
Got
it.
And before we jump into our last two questions we love to ask, M.A. Skidmore, did I say that right?
Correct.
Tell us just a few quick words about Teach Spark coaching.
Good question.
Teach Spark. I help secondary teachers to bring student ownership into their classroom so that they're not carrying all that cognitive load of the classroom. This is why teachers are tired, because we're holding that. We're doing everything for our students, and we do it from a place that's really altruistic and lovely. However, it's not sustainable. So I help teachers to shift that load back to students and bring in that engagement. It's based in theory, but grounded in classroom practice. Small strategies that work, that are agnostic to any content, and things you can do tomorrow in your classroom. So I run a few programs. I have lots of resources. So that's the work that I do with individuals, with schools. I do some professional learning sessions with schools on these strategies and how to build that in, because that's going to lead to sustainable teaching and people being able to do the work they want to do. So that's the work I do in my side hustle.
All right, check out Teach Spark Coaching. Jacob, do you want to plug anything? Social media, projects you're working on, you want the ITP crowd to know about?
Just the podcast. That's it. That's all I'm doing.
Great.
But I will double endorse MA here and say, I've just seen teachers, it's so common when teachers are like, I'm just not that into it anymore. Like, I'm not doing anything new. I don't feel like I'm thriving in the classroom. And then they have a coaching session with MA and, use some of her resources. And then all of a sudden, and I'm just observing, like, as a third party person, all of a sudden they're just like talking about teaching again. They're talking about lesson design. They're sharing what's happening in their classroom. Like, it was so cool. And teachers are into it when they, come back to the staff room, or you see MA talking to someone and they just sort of get I suppose that's why you call it Teach Spark. They get the spark back.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jacob. That's really kind of you. But that's why I do the work, so that I can see that. And these are not teachers who are struggling or about to go on a performance review. These are people who are doing everything right. And despite that, the kids are sitting there, arms crossed across the backpack, waiting to be fed. And the teacher's like, I'm doing everything. Why are they still so passive?
You just described
And I
my
was
day
like,
yesterday.
Yeah, well, it has a lot to do with the learned passivity in
Yeah.
systems that are built on compliance and control. And we've taught them that, not us personally, but the system has taught them, students, to be passive. And this is a way to, jog them out of that and do some things that really will shift that back. So thanks. That's really kind of you to say.
Is there a website for that?
You
MA?
can go right over to LinkedIn. Just look for me, my name. I am
Got it.
that name is there, but that's me. So just reach out to me and give
Wow.
a shout, and I'll send you some stuff and some ideas for
You're
how
awesome.
to bring that.
You know what, Greg? We really got to work on our friendship. These two
I don't have
are so
anything like
warm
that.
and friendly to each other.
I
and then
know.
there's us.
I know.
He lives 50 yards away from me, and I
just
I
keep
walk 100
interrupting
yards
each
around
other,
his house.
too.
I walk around his house so I don't have to run into him in the morning.
That's because he's afraid you're going to make
Friend too.
I've taken packages off his porch before,
And he's
particularly for the
leaving.
food.
and he's leaving me, my only friend.
All right, Greg, go ahead, jump in with our final questions.
Oh, final
Okay,
question.
you might have heard our questions before, but one question I'd like to start with Aimée, and then we'll go Jacob. Can you give us one police story? And we're talking police or customs, and it's G-rated and nothing to get you in trouble, but something fun that you might share about overseas.
A run-in with the cops.
Yeah.
I
God,
will.
Jacob says it like he has to choose which one.
I will tell you that when very early on when I first moved here, and I told you about going across the border and how that's kind of normal for us. We do it all the time. Well, I was going across the border from France back into Switzerland, and the border police control was there. And you kind of slow down as you drive across, and then they either go like this and push you to go to the side and talk to them, or they just don't look at you, or they might just wave you through. So I was there, the whole family in the car, didn't speak French very well. And as we're passing by, I look at the border guard and I just kind of give him a little ta-ta, little wave, and
he's
like, thank you kind of smile, right? And he just kind of, his head snapped and he looked at me and he was just like, stop. And then I was like, okay. And I rolled down the window, or I didn't roll down the window. I put the window down, and then he's like, papers, or I think he was asking for my registration, right? So I got everybody's passports because I didn't understand very well. And I was like, get everybody's passports, cards, UN things, everything, receipts, I don't know what. I just threw everything at him. And as soon as he saw those American passports, he just kind of raised his eye, like looked, it rolled his eyes back, and he's looking. And my husband's just, I'm thinking, I'm going to be arrested. Like, what did I do? Long story short, he starts shouting at me that I was taking the border not seriously enough, and that this is not some border like you think you Americans can just go across any border and it's just fun and games. And he's like, when you go into Canada, do they treat that border like nothing? This is an important border. And I was in tears. My husband's like, just be quiet. Because I thought I did something wrong, right? And I'm very authoritative, this authority coming at me. And then I tell you now, even when I go across that border, I sweat it out, like sweating it out. I'm like, nobody look around. Look forward.
Don't look him in the eye. Don't look him in the eye.
Kids are like,
And even my dog is like barking at them, and I'm like, stop. Don't say anything, eyes forward, and I don't look, nothing. And I go across that border every time I come to my house in France, and I tell you, I still sweat. My husband thinks it's hilarious. He's just like, international incident, right?
Yeah.
But now, my French is good enough. I'd be like, you know what, mister? But no, I don't talk back to
now you're
authority.
flashing.
That's my border story.
I was told that because when I first started cycling to work over the border, I was like, do I need to bring my passport every day? And my wife did not like that idea of me carrying my passport around, destined to lose it. And and I was talking to a colleague, and they're like, no, like you'll get stopped maybe like once a year, and they'll shout at you for a while, and you just stand there and get shouted at, and then they let you go.
Unless you have a ham or milk.
right.
If you bring in
A
meat
limited
across,
amount.
and any kind of like dairy products or meat is very protected. So if you had like a turkey stuffed into your back, your sacoche
And
on your
liquor,
bike,
too.
yeah.
But back to what I said earlier, nobody stops you if you're on a bicycle. So, I could just be cycling hams all day long. It's.
Are you cycling hams every day?
The police dogs are going crazy.
That should be a title episode, cycling hams all day long.
So, did you ever get caught without one, Jacob?
What without a pass? Yeah, I mean it's happened to
Without a
me
ham?
where I've been stopped, and then she was right. Like you kind of get shouted at, and they're like, "You don't have it," and you're like, "Yeah, what am I gonna do?" And then they just eventually let you go, and which is great because losing my passport is like the worst thing that could happen to me. So getting shouted at like every couple of years for not having it is totally worth it.
Kent, have I told the story about being pulled over in Venezuela without shoes?
Greg, I was wondering, as long as we have a moment here on the air with our guests, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the time you were in Venezuela getting pulled over without shoes.
Were you
Funny you
driving
should
without
ask.
shoes?
He was
Funny,
yes, he was
funny you
driving.
should ask.
My
Hey, listen,
husband does that
M.A.,
all the
be happy.
time.
Be happy he drives with a shirt on. My goodness.
Or flip-flops, please.
So I was driving stick shift, and my little car was stick shift. I don't like to drive with shoes on. I'm not a shoe person. I lived in a beach area called Puerto La Cruz of Venezuela, okay? And Puerto La Cruz is a very dangerous city and very realistically dangerous. So in the morning, when I would go around 5:30 or 6 to work to be the first one, usually there's only drunk people driving, and the lights are, working sometimes if there's power. But I was given sound advice from some locals saying, don't ever stop at a stoplight in the middle of the morning because you could get carjacked. Okay, and that's a very realistic thing. So this is about 4 years into living there, on my fourth year, and I'm driving to school one day. I'm wearing a tie. I'm wearing I'm wearing a tie and a white shirt and khakis and socks with no shoes. There's no traffic. I'm zooming through every light. And usually cops don't ever stop you. Nothing ever happens if you go through a light at 6 o'clock in the morning. Unless you're swerving around, they might think you're drunk. They might try and get you to pay some money. But this time I pulled over, and I got pulled over by a cop of the third light that I went through. And the first thing he did was he pulls me over and he asked me if I have tiene fuego. Do you have a gun? And I said, no gun. He goes, all right, papeles. And he wants me to step out of the car and give him the papers. And I had this huge stack of papers because my car had been stolen previously and recovered and rebuilt, etc. Anyway, I hand him this stack of papers, and he looks down, and I don't have my shoes on. He goes, where are your shoes? And I'm like, well, I don't. They're in the car. He says, put on your shoes. He goes, why'd you go through the light? And I said, well, clearly it's early morning and I won't stop because, I'll be held up and carjacked. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, where are your shoes? and I'm like, they're in the car. He's like, okay. And he's going through the papers, and he looks at me again and he goes, why don't you have your shoes on? And I'm like, and this is the third time. And I said, no problem. He goes, why so many papers? Oh, car stolen, recovered. I said, yeah. He goes, where are your shoes? Fourth time. And I'm like, oh, my God, they're in the car. So I started putting my shoes on, actually. And as I'm doing that, he hands me the papers, and he says, drive carefully. And that was it. And I just drove to school. But I had 4 different times he's asked me about my shoes, and he wasn't worried about my safety. He didn't care about the lights or anything because he looked at me like I knew what I was doing. You go through the lights. And it was a very strange incident I'll never forget. So I apologize if I've told my listeners this story again. But that's why we have these stories on the show, because a lot of them are harmless, and it's a cultural thing. Every country's different, right? Kent, what about our second one? And then we'll wrap it up. What's our second question?
Let's start with Aimée, then we'll go to Jacob. You move around. What are 3 items that you move with you that are important to you wherever you are when you move? What are 3
heartbeat.
things? They don't have to be living things. What are 3 objects that you need to feel at home?
I've been overseas for a good 18, 20 years. I grew up overseas, so I don't know even where's home. But one thing I must have is my American deodorant.
Oh.
Have to. I don't know why. It's one thing I cannot. I've adapted to the toothpaste. I've adapted to everything, but yeah, my deodorant. I know that's weird, but no, that's one thing.
That's the first time that's come up. I love that.
I have to have my devices. I want my computers, my phones. You're talking to somebody who hasn't moved as an adult. I've been here for a long time. I'm not like most of your listeners who are moving from international school to international school. But I would say my books, which is hard in a non-English speaking country. You need the books are expensive, and so I'm a lit person, so I'll bring my books along.
I have one thing to add here before you go on to Jacob. Aimée, have you ever heard of Boro Talco?
Yes, I
Have
know
you tried
Boro
it yet?
Talco. Yes.
You have tried it because
They
that's
have
my
the
favorite.
powder, the,
Yep.
the soaps. They have all sorts of products. Yes,
I
very
just had to
nice.
ask you because I import that from Switzerland whenever someone goes. I ask them to buy me deodorant, and it just happens to be my absolute favorite because it's like little flakes of baby powder inside of it, and there's a very little smell if you get the original. So if you haven't tried that, you should try it again. Maybe swing that by. But
All right.
Jacob, if you haven't tried it, you need to go and get some and start using it because it's amazing. All right.
All
Brought
right.
to you
Especially
by
with his
Boro
bike.
Talco.
Biking to work, got to get
This
those
is truly
cycling
an
shorts.
international teacher podcast. When we start talking about which deodorant,
Yeah.
are the
Local
best
deodorant. That's
in the
exactly
world.
right.
It's only a conversation that international teachers could have.
But you try to tell that story to someone back home, they're like, forget it. I'm done.
What? Exactly. Exactly. Whereas every international teacher is like, what are you talking about? From which country are you getting this deodorant?
They're all taking
Which store is
notes,
that?
though.
Can I buy that?
Can I get that on Amazon? Where do I get them? Oh, if
Jacob-
you're going to
Okay.
Switzerland, can you bring some back for me?
Could you bring? Oh, I love that.
That's what I say to all my friends that go back to. If I haven't been to Switzerland in a while, I send somebody to Switzerland with that specifically
I went to
bring
Switzerland.
back.
Greg's like, give me this, this, and this. I'm like, I'm not getting you those things.
What about Jacob?
not
What do you
sure
have
if
for
I'm
three?
That's why we have Amazon. Okay, Jacob.
Yeah.
What are 3 things?
I'm not going to carry some white powder over borders for you.
I got more stories
I'm gonna
about
have
that
to
for you.
explain that it's
It's a package.
deodorant.
Don't ask
Roll
any
up the
questions
deodorant.
about it.
I was gonna, yeah, like so many of Aimé's ideas, I was gonna steal it, and I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna say deodorant because I do ask my mom to bring over the opposite. Like I don't like antiperspirant. I only like too much. Cut this. Cut me talking about deodorant.
Oklahoma.
If
Oklahoma.
All you need to know is I have to have deodorant imported. So that I'm gonna steal that one. It's such a good one. My other one is my bicycle. That's traveled with me everywhere. And then I don't have much. I don't really, but I do every winter. I wear the same winter jumper, Christmas jumper, but not Christmas jumper like it's trendy now to wear a really ugly one. It's kind of just a normal one. It's a normal green jumper. I wear it between when school breaks up and New Year's. I wear the same jumper every day in between the two.
Aimée knows
So-
this.
That would travel with me wherever I go.
You're the first Minnesotan I've heard say jumper, so this is truly an international
he's
podcast.
British.
I'm
'cause
British.
he's
If anybody
British.
asks, I'm British. I don't want the the
You're not
American
Minnesotan, you're British. Okay.
All right.
Show
Let's
notes.
let's take this around the horn. And what is it that we want the ITP crowd to hear from you as parting thoughts? We'll start with Aimée. We'll go to Jacob, and then we'll let Greg wrap us up in comments. Aimée, what do you want the ITP crowd to know?
Just make sure, all you international teachers, that you are protecting your space, your ability to continue doing what you're doing in your classroom by making sure that you're not doing all the work, that your students are meeting you halfway. I know your hearts are in the right place when you are planning those lessons late at night, when you are trying to find a better way. And I'm here to tell you that sometimes it's about stepping back so that your students can have the room to step in, stop filling the space with the talk and the scaffolding and the activities, and find, I don't say find a way. If you reach out to me, I'll help you with that. There is a way to bring students in, but it means you need to step back. That's my advice. Sustainable.
Awesome. Jacob, final thoughts.
Well, we started a podcast this year, and that's been incredibly rewarding. So I would say any teacher that has a thing that they want to do, they should give it a try. Like, we weren't ready to start this. On our first, we weren't prepared, but we just started recording. And you don't need to start a podcast, but you can start a thing and just start it, even if you're not totally ready. because what I found, and a lot of times teachers will say, well, I can't start that thing because it'll take away from my teaching and I got this other stuff going on. I think by having the podcast this year, it's actually made me a better teacher. So whether that's writing a book like Greg's done, or an article, or, starting an Instagram account where you post things about teaching, or whatever you want to do, you should start it. Start it poorly, but start it would be my advice.
I love that. Yes.
All right, Greg, what do you got for us? Final thoughts.
My final thoughts are listeners, you have to go over and check out the International Teacher Staff Room podcast, because they are a part of our tribe. They have an excellent program where the teachers write in and share ideas and questions with people that have been in the business for a long time. And we've talked about it on our podcast, but please go over and listen to theirs. It's a joy, and you can learn a lot, and I'll suffice it with that.
Checks in the mail, Greg. Thank you.
And buy at local meats.
Maplewood
No.
Meats, www.maplewood Meats. I would like to thank our very special guests. They are the co-hosts of the International Teacher Staff Room. Aimée, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's so fun to have a fun, enjoyable, light conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to thank Jacob. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you. It is so fun, guys. Really, really great time. Thank you.
Keep an eye out for the guy with a green jumper and a ham in his backpack.
Oh, let's end there. Thanks, guys.
And that's my co-host, Greg. He's written a couple of books. You can find them at www.amazon.com or wherever you find your finer books. I'm Kent the Bot Guy, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Oh my God! Hang on for a little bit. I enjoyed.
All right,
Kent's
listen,
ending so much.
that was such a great practice. We're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to record this time. Great job, guys. Let's go ahead. Let's take two.